Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's episode of Cronin's Corner. I am your host, State Senator John Cronin. I am so grateful this month to be joined by two incredible professionals who everybody in North Central and the entire region knows very well, but they're also two of the nicest people you will ever meet, Kat Deal and Leanne Scales.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.
Senator.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, we're talking about childcare.
We're talking about childcare. So very exciting new initiative that you two have come together. Before we get into that and what you're working on now, could each of you just give kind of a brief synopsis of just your professional background and how the experiences that got you to this role right now? Kat, can we start with you?
Absolutely. So a lot of people know me from the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce as the events and program manager. And prior to that, I worked in the tech industry. Prior to that, I was a mom of two kids who struggled with childcare and didn't get to work for 7 years in a career-driven role. And before that, I was in grad school and I worked for the B.F. Skinner Foundation. And I was a researcher for the group and I was a grad student. And I think that for me, the progression of being here was a really natural one.
Yeah.
I've done research before. I've done project management before. I was a mom who struggled with childcare, and I went through all the hoops for that. And then being at the chamber and, getting to meet some of the most amazing business and stakeholders in our region and forming great relationships with them, to being put in a position where I have the ability to maybe move the needle forward for women and families in our region, it couldn't have been a better progression for me. And I'm not going to lie, the idea to work with Leanne was the most tempting part.
Aw, same.
You said just how your lived experience kind of informs why you're so excited and passionate about this role. What are some of the opportunities that you wish you had as a young mother, and what were the effects of not having those opportunities on your career progression or your family?
Oh, 100%. So I left a position where I was managing a store in one of the biggest malls in California.
Yeah.
And to have my daughter. And when I was ready to go back to work, the childcare just wasn't existent in where I was living in California. I just was way behind the curve. I had no idea I was supposed to sign up like a year in advance. And this is in the 90s. Let's remember that. This is the late 90s. It was still the same problem. And so I didn't go back to work and I had my second child. And at that point we were like, I need to bring in some income. And I couldn't find anything during the day that was going to pay enough for me to put two kids in childcare.
To be able to afford it.
To be able to afford it. And this is now 2000. So I worked nights. I took a nighttime job at a huge box store. And within a few months, they wanted to promote me. I had management experience. They were like, why are you not a manager for us? And I said, I would love that opportunity to get back into retail management. And they said, this is your salary. I said, do you understand that two kids in childcare is $6 more than you are going to pay me? So I couldn't take a position. I couldn't forward my career at that time.
Yeah.
And so what I would have loved was that this enormous big box store making millions and billions of revenue could have said, we can help with childcare. Any opportunity that I could have been given to have a reduction would have been amazing, but it wasn't available. So the idea that my career stagnated for 7 years until I was able to move to Gardner, lucky enough to move across the street from an in-home childcare, and went to work part-time. And then when the kids were in school, I was able to work a little more. I had to help to get reduced costs because we still couldn't afford, childcare, at that point, early 2000s it's still really expensive even back then. So I'm now in a place where I get to maybe change that narrative for women moving forward.
Yep. And I think one of the themes we're going to talk about is how, a young mother and a young family's interests are aligned with the business community's interests too, in ways that we need to double down on and expand and collaborate, right? Public-private partnerships. So, Leanne, how about you?
Yeah, this is a pro-business initiative. So, similar story. I started out, went to college, majored in political science and journalism. I was a journalist for several years.
You worked in Congress too,
I did.
right?
That led me to a career in D.C. I was a press secretary for a congressman for several years. Had not had children yet. Then when I had children, it was right around the time I was moving to Massachusetts. And that's when I discovered how difficult childcare is. So it impacted my career a bit, but what I really noticed was how it impacted every man and woman around me in their career in some way, shape, or form. And I was fortunate enough to have worked, as a journalist at the State Senate, at the Congress in D.C., and then I worked at Mount Wachusett Community College and Worcester State University, two great places. And what I found in both of those roles here in Massachusetts is the number of times I would approach, usually a female, but sometimes a male, and say, there's this job you should apply for. You would be so great in this role. And similar to the story that Kat shared, I would hear, I would love to, but the job I have right now has these certain hours I can absolutely plan on. There's not an expectation for me to be out at evening events, or there's not an expectation for me to be at an early morning community breakfast.
Yeah.
I have to be at drop-off and pick-up for childcare, or I can't make it work.
Yeah.
So I would see people really slow their career progression down because of their childcare commitments. On the flip side, as a manager and someone who is looking to hire employees, we were always struggling, as you know, many businesses.
This talent is out there, and you can't, right? You can't get them in the tent.
It's very difficult. If you talk to any employer, any hiring manager in North Central Massachusetts, in New England, in the United States, everyone's number one complaint right now is they cannot hire talent fast enough. And when they do hire talent, they cannot keep them. So what I have learned over my career as a journalist, as a public servant, is that there has got to be a better way to not just help families, but to also help businesses grow, because they definitely need growth. We need talent. And if we know one of the number one barriers to talent acquisition is childcare, come on. And if you had asked us, say in the 1930s, should business offer health care as a benefit, a paid benefit to
People
employees?
would have laughed you out of the room, right?
Now you cannot consider not offering health care because it's good business.
Sure.
Because it's good business, you attract employees, right? In New England, you say the name Horace Mann, and we know the story of great public education. There was a time in the United States where that was not understood. And in fact, when they brought forth the idea, perhaps we should make K-12 education free,
right? Yeah.
There was quite a blowback. People were, what do you know? And so, no, only this class of people should be educated. And then, but then businesses learned without an educated populace, you are not going to
grow.
have,
You
right?
cannot grow.
And so we believe that if, over 90% of, if you are the number of children, there's 82,000 children in our region. And of those children, over 95% have at least one working parent. That's our workforce, folks.
Yep.
Our workforce is parents. And anytime that I tell someone that the Department of Labor suggests you should not spend more than 7% of your family income on childcare, I get laughed at. People are paying 25%, 20%, 30% of their household income to childcare. So of course, the math for many families is, why are we both working?
Sure,
Right.
It doesn't make sense. I'd rather just
It
be
doesn't
home,
make
right?
sense,
So
exactly.
when we talk about
Right.
expanding childcare here in North Central or anywhere across the Commonwealth of the country, I mean, it's a win-win-win, right?
It is.
Businesses, for every childcare seat or every childcare opportunity that we make accessible and affordable, the business is able to grow. The mother or the father is able to stay in the workforce and allow their career to progress. And then we know it's key for emotional and social growth for
children.
For children.
Absolutely.
Right? And by the
Right.
time they get to kindergarten, it's like you're already behind if you haven't had the opportunity that other kids have had.
Absolutely.
So let's tell the folks who we're working for.
Yeah.
So this
So
is
we've got this new initiative initiative
New
here
initiative.
in North Central Massachusetts.
It is. It's a brand new initiative, and thanks to the our great friends at the Health Foundation of Central Mass, Dr. Amy Shea is their
Who's
CEO.
terrific,
She
right?
is terrific,
Yeah.
and
she's everywhere.
She's
everywhere.
And they have these really innovative synergy grants. And for any of our partners in North Central Mass who've had a grant before, you are given money with the expectation you will do good work, and they check in with you mid-year, and at the end of the year, they measure your success. The synergy grants, on the other hand, they are at your side all the way through.
Yeah.
We have grant management meetings. Amy's at every single one. You have a meeting of your advisory board, Amy is there. We have regular check-ins because she has access to ideas, thought leaders, and other connections. For example, this coalition that they're funding the coalition. Kat and I are based in the offices at the Community Foundation of North Central Mass and the United Way. The CEO of the Community Foundation of North Central Mass is really the architect behind this idea. Yeah. He noticed this challenge in the region, and he thought, a community foundation cannot fix childcare, but I can convene people and ideas together. So he wrote the grant with a group of business leaders who were already forming a coalition to seek funding. So that's the grant, and what we aim to do, what we endeavor to do, is find a funding formula that's shared. Families pay a little, business pays a little, the government pays a little. What those amounts are, we don't know. We don't pretend to know.
No.
We are working with some skilled evaluators, Green Mountain Evaluation, 2 MIT students at the Sloan School to gather data for this whole year about our community's readiness. Right now, they're talking to employers, childcare providers, parents, families in North Central Mass, and looking at all the models across the country. The simplest and easiest to understand model is the Michigan model, where business pays a third, government pays a third, family pays a third. There are other models, and they're everything from setting income caps or thresholds to setting up a trust fund. But we need to find the model that fits our region.
Sure.
Then the idea is we test it. We have a pilot, and we run that formula with businesses who voluntarily want to do this. And then we track it. Do those businesses retain employees better? Did those businesses have a better time attracting talent? Did families find more ability to advance their careers, to have stability for their family?
Retention, right?
Right, yeah. So then we measure it, and then we can go to the Commonwealth, who is looking at a multi-billion-dollar sticker price for childcare, and nobody wants to spend public funds without really thoughtfully looking at what that funding will do.
Yep.
And for far too long, we've said childcare, we should fund it, but oof, that's a lot. So,
and that's a debate we're having right now in the legislature,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I know
There's
coming
several
out of
bills that have been.
several bills,
Yeah.
we passed one in the Senate, and no, it's a priority for the House to address too.
And the governor.
And the governor, right?
Yeah.
And there's $400 million, per fiscal year through the pandemic that we received in federal funds. And one thing that the legislature has done as those federal funds have run out because they were part of the emergency relief, the CARES Act, the federal funds that we received during the pandemic, we've actually continued funding our child care system at the cost of about $400 million a year to fill that gap between the money that we had going in and the deficit that we now have. Now the federal funds are exhausted,
Yeah.
but how we fund that system and how we do it equitably is something that is being debated right now. So I think this is, everything that you are trying to doing can be scaled across the state.
I
hopefully.
agree.
And we hope to give you, a lab and example to look at, because
Yeah.
I can't imagine sitting in your seat, talking with your colleagues on the Senate floor and in the House, and trying to decide how to spend the money. If you had this example to look at, where you could say, well, look, in North Central Mass, this is the result they saw. That's what the funding model is. Could this work across the Commonwealth? That would be extraordinarily helpful. So,
And the business community can point to it and say, okay, we want some of that, right?
Because there's a
Right.
return of, there's a return of investment that has been proven by the other models that are going across the country. Because, Michigan is one. There's many states are, as close as Connecticut is trying to do different models. And the return on investment is huge for some businesses. And I think that the idea that we're leaving money on the table because we have a workforce that is unable to be there, is really not promoting our economic development as well as we could be.
Sure.
You mentioned the pandemic and the funds. 4.5 million daycare slots were lost at the pandemic. 4.5 million. That's a lot of children that weren't able to, as you said, socialize and progress in the manner that they could have.
And we're stuck at home in front of a TV.
And we're all
probably,
stuck at home
right?
in front of a TV, and
Or
the parents are
screen.
trying to work. And how many people just walked away and said, I can't manage all of this on our own. And how many people, and how many women specifically, didn't return to the workforce. We are not paying attention to the fact that we know there's an issue, but that the idea that there's such a huge economic development part that we are missing out on, so much money being invested back into our communities, it's something that I feel like really should be taken up. And the charge is coming, and I love the fact that so many people from so many different sides are understanding this is an issue.
And realize they're vested stakeholders
And realize,
too.
right. We were talking, Leanne mentioned that, there was a time when we would have never offered healthcare through a business. I remember maybe 10 years ago when Fitbits became very popular. Businesses could not throw money at people enough. $500 incentive to wear it for a year. Be a healthy person. We'll give you the Fitbit.
Right.
They had no problem understanding that could be, or a gym membership could be a benefit to your family. So I think that businesses are 100% understanding that healthy activity and healthy benefits should be a part of a package to attract employees.
And it's a huge economic development imperative too.
Oh,
We just had
yes.
Travis Condon on the show, and he talked about the One North Central plan and the regional economic development plan that the Community Foundation, the Chamber, elected officials are all convene around to address challenges and opportunities. My question is, with our priority industries, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, those are 24-hour industries, right?
Yeah.
They have shift work. Healthcare, the hospital's open 3 shifts.
Yeah.
A lot of our factories are humming 24 hours a day, 363 days a year. How is that unique to the challenge that we're facing in childcare here in North Central?
Well, I think you just stated it. It's unique because we have shift workers who are working hours when they perhaps need childcare when childcare isn't open. So this region offers a unique economy, and to look at what that might look like, because, and Kat's the perfect case study. She chose to work night and take herself out of the equation because that's how she worked around childcare.
Right.
But we know that it's hurting businesses. We're working on figuring out what the loss and the cost is to businesses here. But if you look at nationwide, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation did a study nationwide of everything. Yeah. And per state, we're losing $400 million to $2.8 billion. Now, we don't know what that number breakout is for our region.
I think it's about $2 billion in the state. There is a number that I've seen, and I believe it.
If we're losing $2 billion, and the investment to help improve it was less than that, you could have a net gain. But this region is important. And the other thing to think about when you think about how this, because we can talk about how shift workers' families have that challenging dynamic of finding childcare while they're working. But let's step back for a moment and think about what happens to productivity. Yeah. So let's talk about emergency rooms, 24 hours a day. You don't get to close up, right? And how many emergencies, how many of us have been in an ER in the middle of the night, right? With an injured person or a sick child. So if there's an employee of that emergency room who can't get childcare, it's not just his or her problem that they can't get childcare. That's a person who's not there providing life-saving support to members of our community. To the most vulnerable
person in the community at that moment of that day.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So if you are a healthcare provider and the employees who you count on to save lives can't get to work or can't work out their schedule, that's a problem. And we've already seen that we're having an incredible challenge, especially during and since the pandemic, getting healthcare providers to the level. I don't know very many healthcare providers who say that they've hired and they're fully staffed. Yeah. So if we can eliminate one barrier to getting skilled healthcare professionals in the roles they need to play, it's good for business, it's good for health and safety, and it's good for the economy. And then if you look at shift workers in manufacturing, we've all heard about how much did we learn about supply chain during the pandemic?
Oh, yeah.
a lot. But we also know that the reason those institutions are working 24 hours is because they are feeding a supply chain that makes our economy run. So it's not just that there's a family somewhere who doesn't have childcare. There's a business who can't meet their orders because their productivity is not where it needs to be to meet the needs of the clients that they promised goods for. So this one challenge is hitting us everywhere.
At every level, right? Business, the family, the kids. So when I heard that you two are going to be working together, I think I did what everybody did. Like I said, that's going to be an electric collaboration. This is exciting. I want to see those two in a room together. So could you fill us in on what's next? What are you guys up to, and how are you engaging the community, and what can we expect to see?
Yeah. So perfect. So as I said,
an electric collaboration.
It's an electric. So the surveys anyway. But the thing I'm really excited about is if you've ever had a new initiative, and you are out meeting people all the time, John, and so you might say to somebody, there's this new initiative, I'd love to have you involved, and you send like 4 emails, and then you send the dreaded circling back email because nobody's responding to you.
Just get this back to your top of your emails.
Everyone we've asked.
This ain't that,
Yeah.
right? This ain't that.
Everyone we've asked has said yes.
Yeah.
So the North Central Chamber of Commerce, the Neshoba Chamber of Commerce, the 2 hospitals, education centers, we have huge employers like Bristol-Myers Squibb and Advanced Cable Ties, and to a person, I have not, nor has Kat, called a single person and said, do you want to join our coalition? And they've said, sounds like a nice initiative, but I'm busy.
Yeah, let me send it up the chain, and we'll get that.
No,
we'll call you. Don't call us.
So
right?
we know it's a problem, but we're having our board is convening in June when we'll get the first peek at our data.
Yeah.
And I'll let Kat talk about how they've been gathering the data, the students, what they're doing, and what we're going to hear at that June meeting.
Yeah, so we had our 2 students from the Sloan School at MIT visit. They were in North Central region, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And we set up all kinds of interviews for them. So they are interviewing all the sectors. They were interviewing parents. They interviewed, CEOs, legislative. We want them to take this community readiness survey and get everybody's opinion that they can of all the different sectors, because we already know who's got the pain point. Low-income families paying 30% of their income for childcare is the pain point. We already know that. But we need to know other people's pain points. So gathering all that data, and on top of that, we're doing an extremely extensive lit review. And that's a really big part of what I'm doing, is I am looking at what is being done out there, what is working and what is not working, and how does that fit with our model? Is it shift worker centered? Is it manufacturing? Is it healthcare? What is the demographic of that area? So that kind of data, that's very exciting, because as I was at the chamber when the One North Central plan came out and read it, I'm one of the few people, I think, that has sat down and read the entire thing. It was very clear at that time that we had a workforce issue, and that was a really big part of it.
And the demographics aren't getting easier, right?
They're not getting easier. It's really interesting, because Leanne and I were just talking in the green room about the fact that you were talking about that trend where
it's in State House News and in Master List. The people are leaving the Commonwealth.
People are leaving.
Young professionals are leaving the Commonwealth. Age 22 to 44?
25 to 44.
I was so close.
And here in North Central, it's exacerbated too, because we have an aging population.
We do.
Right?
We really do. And so when you are not attracting a younger workforce, you have an aging workforce that is going to age out. Like the pilots are trying to say that pilots can now fly over 55 when they weren't allowed to before.
Right.
So, when I'm looking at all of this data and we're researching this and we're taking all of these things into consideration, because there are so many facets that actually make up North Central. We are not a one and done region, which is one of the most fascinating things about it.
And different communities have significantly
very different needs,
challenges.
100%. So that is where we're at. We are on a fact-finding mission right now. We really want to dive into what has been working, what's not working. And I have been finding some of the most creative things. We have been hearing stories of creative childcare solutions across the country. And we just got to find out what's working for our region. But having the MIT Sloan students, the MIT students a part of this is
serious brain power.
Serious brain power. And that's how it all began, which was the Moss Page report, which was done in March 2023.
Right, Emily Moss, Samantha Page.
Yeah.
2 students, and because Steve, our CEO of the Community
Commander of the
Foundation.
Starship. Yeah.
So he said, I need some help. And he found there's a great class at the Sloan School of Management called USA Lab. And they have students assigned to projects all across the country. Ours is one.
Yeah.
There are students that are in New Orleans, that are in Texas, and they are embedding themselves in a community program and providing research chops for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he really leaned on those two students that gathered some of the data that I shared with you today about North Central Mass. And that was the initial report that helped write the grant to entice the Health Foundation of Central Mass to provide us the funding. So,
Yeah. And that report made it clear that, a lack of childcare is one of the biggest hindrance for
Growing a
women,
workforce,
for growing
right?
a workforce.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read a statistic, and then I heard a report on it, which was really interesting about 3 weeks ago, that said when it comes to men and women, we handle money very differently. Men save. They like to 401k, invest. Women
Mansplain their personal finances.
I didn't say
right?
that, you did,
Yeah,
John.
I did, yeah.
But women will invest in the local economy as opposed to that. So the idea that we have women that are not working,
Yeah.
so one, they're not being able to move mobilely, they're not helping the workforce shortage, which we know could. You can go back and look at the Rosie the Riveters. Government understood that childcare was a necessity to get women back to get them into the workforce for the first time. So we know that it's a problem, right? So we're well aware of what to do with it, and I think that we are poised to take it on and to help solve it. I really see that we have a chance to do this.
and one of the things when Steve was approaching the Health Foundation, and I believe it was one of the assets that secured the grant. This region, and you know it better than anyone, is incredibly collaborative.
Yeah.
So some of these institutions that we've mentioned, the educational institutions, the chambers of commerce, the business leaders, I can't remember a time where I picked up the phone and asked a superintendent or a business CEO for help on a project that they've said,
No.
no.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because we're just far enough geographically outside of Boston that we really need to make our own infrastructure and economy.
Yes.
But this region is a great region to test this pilot because leaders step up
Yep.
in this region. And I believe that was one of the key components that made this attractive.
Get green lighted.
And the
I
other
think
thing
so.
that's interesting is there are childcare initiatives all across the country. Everybody's trying to solve this problem. And Steve and I met with someone who runs CHIPS, which is, nationwide effort around childcare for the military, and said that she knew of nobody else who was looking at a shared model in a pilot this way. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't one,
Yeah.
but it's rare. And so we've had some of the folks in our network, either at the Federal Reserve or at the Department of Labor,
Yeah.
who are interested in our watching this project develop. So we know we're doing something right if people who are trying to solve the problem
Are looking at you.
are looking at
right?
us.
Yeah.
So
we've
no
got,
pressure.
We've got a couple of minutes left. How can people in the community, whether they are a young family or a business, how can they support the work that you're doing right now?
Honestly, probably the best would be sharing information.
Okay.
So we are gathering data, as I said, so you can reach out to us through the Community Foundation of North Central Mass or the United Way. We do have a LinkedIn page and a website, so you can find it linked to both the United Way and the Community Foundation. And just reach out, and we'd love to hear your data. We're not at the point of advocacy yet. We're not at the point where we're going to ask people to advocate for
Sure.
a specific model because we don't know what it is yet. But right now, we're in our first year, which is a planning research phase. So information and data would be great.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you both so much for your really lifetime of service to this region, especially. I mean, you are two of the most impactful leaders around, and I'm so excited that you're working together on something that is so critical and so important. And I have no doubt is going to make what I hope is a lasting impact on so many families' lives. So thank you, and look forward to continuing to work on this with you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Senator.
Thank you,
bet.
John.
You bet. All right, everybody, that's it for this month. Look forward to seeing you for next month's show, but big thanks due to Kat and Leanne for joining us and all the work they're doing. Take care.
Thank you.